Hi, Mark here from the Tangent-Bound Podcast Network and host of the flagship show, the Tangent-Bound Podcast. Did you know that we over at Tangent-Bound are always looking for amazing podcasts to promote? And did you also know that we are also proud nerds and geeks of everything from movies, music, gaming, TV shows, and comic books to wrestling, MMA, soccer, and football? Whatever you can nerd or geek out about, we've got it. And if you're interested, we can help you find it. And if you're a show looking for a place to call home, we've got you covered. Side effects may include upset stomach, dizziness, tumors, shakes, and in some rare cases, death from excessive laughter. Though to be fair, it's only sometimes. Other side effects may include diarrhea, gallstones, heart palpitations, and strong desire for cookies on the dark side. Talk to your doctor and visit TangentBoundNetwork.com and see if Tangent-Bound Network is right for you.
Sucks to the last drop. Are you gonna blow your head off? Take good aim and don't forget to duck. A life sucks every Monday and all the way to Sunday, but I wouldn't have it any other way. I don't care how you're doing, what's up or how's it hanging. I'd like to buy this world one last drink. Life sucks all of the time. Stick it up your sunshine, and then you'll see the clouds every day. And then you'll see the clouds every day. And then you'll see the clouds every day.
We're not doctors, therapists, trained professionals of any kind, so if you feel you do need help, please reach out and get the help you need. We have a whole list of things on our files page over on Facebook at facebook.com/crazylifepodcast, and or just search on the internet for the suicide prevention hotline number, or go to NAMI.org or whatever resource you can find. But just please reach out for help if you need it. If you feel as though you're going to harm yourself or others, definitely reach out. And try not to be alone. Also, if you feel that way and you realize that you're writing a note or making plans of how you would do, like harm yourself or others, definitely reach out. That's a huge red flag. And lastly, please do not replace the idea of therapy with listening to this show. Again, if you need help, please reach out and get the help that you need, or contact us. We can try to help you find the help that you need. Welcome to a new episode of The Crazy Life. I'm Brian. Joining me as usual is Henno.
Hello.
And we don't have Jen this week because she's at work or something. Welcome to anyone who has never listened before, and welcome back to those of you who've listened and stuck around with us. We appreciate all of you, downloading and listening or streaming or however it is you're catching us. So, it's funny. We every once in a great while it's kind of like on Salty Language, how Tony and I, sometimes just don't introduce ourselves. I know, on this show, we've done it a few times where we're like, hey, this is what, I'm Brian. I have social anxiety. Well, I don't know. I forgot which they diagnosed me with. I don't remember if it's general or social, but I have anxiety and depression and, a bunch of other, phobias or fears, or I don't know. We'll figure that out later. And, how about you, Henno?
And I'm an alcoholic.
I know. No. For anyone who's been around the show before too, I'm what I feel like is at the beginning of a sinus cold or something here. So I will try to not cough on mic.
But there might be some throat clearing.
There's probably going to be a lot of that. Yeah. There we go.
I can totally hear it. You just sound different.
I know, right? Yeah, you can always tell
Such
when I'm
a
sick.
trip.
Yeah. My voice goes deeper
You
generally.
hurt your nose a little.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, it's good fun. Well, I guess I'll go first since obviously I've already, clearly that's been going on for me. It's weird how sometimes this stuff happens though, and it's like yesterday I felt fine. Totally okay. Today I wake up and, my throat hurts and I could tell my sinuses have been draining and, and I run through these usually once or twice a year. I get something like this for about a week and it stinks and then I'm okay. But I feel okay otherwise. Like I'm not low energy, nothing like that. I'm not like running a fever, there's none of those kind of things. It's just gonna stink for a week. But aside from that, I went to see pro wrestling this past week.
Oh yeah.
Which was a lot of fun.
Cool.
Tony couldn't end up going, but my nephew's son ended up going with us, so that was his first time going to one, so that was pretty cool.
Awesome.
And he seemed to have a good time, and we were explaining stuff to him because he doesn't normally watch. And, like, he got a little frustrated during, commercial breaks because it's it's a televised event, and there's, they stop everything during commercials. They don't,
Yeah.
well, not always. If there's a match going on, they will cut in and out of it. But, like if someone's coming down to the ramp or something, they actually stop when they go off of TV. They have someone standing over there that will like hold their hand up and tell the wrestler to stop, and then their music, when they come back in, their music kicks back up and then they walk the rest of the way down. Which is weird. You think they just have them walk to the ring and then when you come back you just show them in the ring, but for some reason they don't do it that way usually. So, little stuff you see live that you don't realize happens when you're watching on TV. But yeah, it was a lot of fun. We had a pretty good time, aside from, some people in front of us just kept getting up in the middle of matches, and it's funny because, with stuff like this, I look at it the same way I look at, like rock shows or music, of any kind, or, comedy sets or whatever. It's like during the performance, I try not to walk away. Like if I'm going to do it at a concert or something, I try to do it between songs. I try not to do it in the middle of a song. And same when wrestling. It's like, I try to wait until there's a lull or a break or something like that. So that if nothing else, I'm not standing up blocking people's views and,
Yeah.
Also because I went to a lot of hockey games as a kid and I think this is a standard rule, but I know it happens here, which is if you go out, you can't come back in until the action is stopped.
Okay.
When there's a stoppage of play, then the ushers will let you back in. But until then, you got to stand back there, and that's that's just the rule. And I've always liked that because again, you're not excuse me, and have a whole wave of people blocking everyone's vision.
Yep.
But anyway, like I said, the whole thing was fun. The seats are a little cramped in that thing for a robust man like me. So, that was not comfortable for a little while till we realized there was no one going to be sitting next to us. So then we spread out a little bit, but it's like people listening don't know who T is potentially, but you do. And, T's a buddy of ours, a, good sized lad like me. And we were right next to each other in these little seats, and I mean, we were pretty much sitting on each other's lap,
Oh, wow.
So, yeah. No big deal, though. It was still good times.
That sounds like fun.
Yeah, it really was. I always enjoy going to them, and, and it was cool seeing, I'm one of those people, like, I've never had an itch to have kids, like, I've never wanted to. But I love, like, seeing kids when they're in their element and super happy,
Mm-hmm.
Like a lot of the kids, there's a wrestler named AJ Styles, who's the champion on SmackDown, and he was originally scheduled to be in the main event, but they they actually had fired a guy earlier in the day, which then they changed the 2 main matches, and it made it to where AJ wasn't going to be there at all. And there's so many kids wearing his gear, you know.
Oh, wow.
Like, he wears gloves when he wrestles, and they sell those at the merch booth. They got his t-shirt on, you know what I mean? So,
yeah.
And, you know, they got their replica belt up on their shoulders and everything. And I'm like, man, you know, it's like, it always sucks when your guy isn't there. I mean, it happens. You can't control it, because it's TV, not everyone gets on, you know, but, then, after the last match, it was to see who was the number 1 contender for the upcoming pay-per-view against AJ. Well, then AJ's music hits and he walks out and comes out to the ring, and the kids around me are just going crazy. Like that. But that was really cool to see. You know, I felt there was a kid off to my right and down a little bit that had Down syndrome. And he kept turning to this woman that was with him. I don't know if it's his mom or what, you know. And he kept saying AJ, because he had the gear, he had the stuff, he had the wrist or armband and all the stuff, you know. And he's like, "Where's AJ?" And I'm like, "Oh man," you know, because in my head I'm like, "Man, I hope he comes out for something." You know, even if it's a talking segment or whatever.
Yeah, yeah.
And then when he came out at the end, the kid went nuts, and I'm like, awesome. Great. Now he's got his moment, you know?
Yes.
And that's what I love. I love it when people can get their moment, kids especially, when they can get their moments like that. So, that was cool.
That's super cool.
Yeah. Really, that's about all I've done this week. I've been so lazy, I know. Remember all that productivity I was doing there? Right out.
Yeah.
Right out.
Wasn't habit forming, huh?
No. It did not stick around. I mean, I've got little stuff done off and on. I've sold some stuff on eBay. I packed it and got it out, you know, but yeah, overall, no. I mean, if I was only awake during my productive time, I'd only been awake probably for like an hour to 2 each day. So, yeah, I probably should kick myself in the butt here this week, and, well, I'll probably feel sick all week.
Yeah.
But, yeah, we'll see. So anyway, now, after all that, how's your week been?
I was going to say I've been the same way, but I just realized I did do a gig last week, so that tends to be a lot of work.
Yeah.
But for the most part, I have definitely enjoyed my leisure time. We had some crummy weather again. Finally, it's nice. This weekend has been really nice, but we had rain in the beginning of last week, and so that's, you know, it's like can't mow the lawn.
Yeah.
Just watching the grass get taller.
Yeah.
You know, so it wasn't until like Friday that I can finally actually do any yard work, but. We had a gig on Wednesday. That was a pretty big one, and I took the afternoon off, which was just great. Because since I knew I only had to work, 4.5 hours, I went into work, totally just crushed it.
I bet, yeah. Like singing while you're working,
short.
Yeah,
yeah,
skipping around.
Yeah, come and for me, even it's, I had to since I don't have a truck anymore, I have to grab all my gear in 2 trips. But then I just, I know my stuff. I set it all up. We had good sound. It was the one thing that crushes me about gigs is when we're literally finishing up and the time to start is happening. And I haven't had a chance to eat. Yeah. I haven't had a chance to warm up. I haven't had anything. So I had plenty of time. But then we needed to stretch some time, so there was a lot of, solo acoustic guitar playing that I was just getting really antsy about. Because I had people in the audience that were like, yeah, we're going to leave.
Yeah.
But I just didn't, I didn't have the right times and, whatever it was. But we went on stage, and Dave and I had a great night. Not so much our main singer and guitar player had a rough 3 songs, and this was and this is not this is just the truth. It's the worst thing I've ever experienced. Honestly, I've never, ever experienced somebody, just fall apart, basically.
Oh, yeah.
And it's not, it had nothing to do with not practicing enough, anything like that. It was just one of those things. And unfortunately, it's like anything you see with athletes or whatever, once it's in your head, you just can't get out of it.
Yeah.
All I could do was try to be up there and be solid because this isn't my deal. Usually I'm the guy up front.
Yeah.
Not anymore, I just need to be in the back. And so I was like, okay, Dave and I just adjusted as we could, just kept a smile on my face, all that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And, and I felt really good, but we were fortunate in that we did, he did like a whole half hour solo acoustic. It was great. And then we had 3 songs and it just cascaded one the other. So, luckily they were doing a raffle. So we get off the stage and we're in the back and it's just like, okay, let's look at the set. What can we do to get you back in?
Yeah.
Let's get into a solution here.
So
is going to get you back.
There was
in?
like a raffle in between the set, basically, kind of a thing. Okay.
Yeah, like he did that solo acoustic thing. We played 3 songs, and it was like, okay, we're gonna announce half the raffle winners.
Okay.
So yeah, we had a little bit of downtime. It was like, okay, let's pick this song, get back up there, and then things went well.
Yeah.
Yeah, everything was fine. At least it wasn't nothing just really bad. But it's wild how those things just happen.
Mm-hmm.
You'll
see an athlete that trains all the time, like for a race or something like that, and they just tripped right out of the gate. It's like,
and it was just like, and it's not like you had a little misstep and that's it, but you're still in it.
Yeah.
This was like a completely like, okay, I just gave the ball to the other team, kind of, almost.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, how can, and there's nothing you can do. It's just the way it is, so. And it was just a bummer because here's the worst part. I'm looking at the audience and I'm seeing practically every single musician in the valley out there. I was like,
oh,
at least the beer is cheap and flowing, Well, it was true at the end, anybody that I talked to, they had no idea.
Mm-hmm.
They had no idea. And so the one thing, I personally tried to do is, there's things like there's one place I don't apologize in my life, and that's on stage.
Yeah.
I do not admit weakness on stage.
Yeah.
And I do not show it on stage. Right. Anything that happened was supposed to happen.
Right. I heard, years ago, ESPN had a TV show. It was a reality show to find like a Sports Center anchor, basically. And, there was one guy that was doing a report and he kept saying he'd say someone's name wrong, then he would stop and correct himself, and they kept telling him, they're like, when you make a mistake, just move on, get it right the next time. Like, don't acknowledge it because that draws all the attention right to that. Like, just, just put it aside, keep moving, kind of a thing. And that makes a lot of sense. And same with music. It makes sense. If you messed up a little bit and then you completely stopped the song and then start it again, people will be like, what the hell was that? Like,
you don't go, oh, we're starting over again. I mean, yes, I've seen some bands do it.
Me too.
And you can do it when it's funny.
Yeah.
Or when it's something really, it's totally okay to do it every once in a while. But for the most part, you don't say anything in between. You don't make any comments, and so we have to have. We're rehearsing tomorrow night. We're gonna have, or I'm gonna bring that up in a band meeting because it's something that I truly believe in. Because the fact of the matter is, the audience doesn't know half the time.
Yeah, you're
right.
Even
if it's huge, they don't know.
Yeah,
sure, a musician might know, but for the most part, people don't know. They're out having a good time and stuff, and that kind of thing.
Well,
so
I remember in that what was it on PBS, that documentary about music, that I remember Ringo talking about that with the Beatles, saying that basically the longer they were on tour, the worse they were as musicians, but basically nobody would know because they're still seeing the Beatles, basically. They're not nitpicking them, kind of a thing, even though he's like, we're all like, oh, we sounded terrible tonight, like that concept. And, it's, and anyone who does anything like that knows it, that there's always something, if I draw something, somebody else will be like, wow, that looks great, and be like, yeah, but it's not this and this, and and they're like, oh, I didn't even realize that. So
Exactly.
Oh, cool. I just put it in your head.
I was stoked to just get, I never felt nervous, not for a second. Awesome. And it was so great. I was so stoked. There was not a shaky moment in my voice, nothing in my fingers, which typically happens when I play guitar a little bit or something, but just nothing. And it was interesting when at one break, the drummer I play with, Dave, he had a seizure last year out of nowhere. Went to bed at night, woke up in a hospital in an ambulance heading to the hospital. So it happened while he was still in his sleep.
Wow, fortunate that. My former sister-in-law died that way. Like she had a bad seizure in her sleep and never recovered.
Oh, so, see, and that's but Dave was 6 weeks of just a lot of fear, until he got cleared and blah, 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 because they really have no idea why it happened. He's on medications right now, and one thing we talked about, we were taking a break at one point, and he asked me he was asking me about not drinking, because he's noticed, and he's not sure if it's the medications, or if it's just a little anxiety or whatever it is. And I hear our friend Neil talk about this often too, where it's like, you have a few drinks and he wakes up the next morning feeling like, I kind of feel a little fuzzy, and if I don't drink, I don't feel this.
Yeah. I have that with my medicines, with the antidepressants. I've noticed that if I drink more than probably 2-3 beers, I will wake up and feel off. Like fuzzy and just not quite right.
and I think when you've experienced something traumatic like that, any little off can raise anxiety again, because you're like, oh, is something happening, blah, blah. And so he asked me that, he didn't tell me what it was about. He just started asking me about me and not drinking. And, so you literally don't have any desire whatsoever. And I'm like, no. I said the only time I ever have a desire to have anything alcoholic is like with a food pairing.
Yeah.
Just because it's something that I know is good.
Right.
Or, some particular unique cocktail that just, sounds and smells delicious.
Right. Yeah, sure.
Just to try it. But as far as drinking goes, no. Like, there's nothing that everything that I drank to do because it helped me with my anxiety or whatever it is, I don't need to anymore. I have found other ways to overcome that. Yeah. And so that I don't have to use it as a crutch anymore. And I said, getting on stage right now is one of those things. I used to have a couple drinks, to kind of ease the nerves. Like I said, I got up there, nothing. I mean, it was so great, right?
Yeah.
And so then, he explained what happened, and I was like, and his whole point is like, he's like, I'm kind of looking at it like, what's the point? What am I getting out of a big beer every night?
Yeah.
Is it worth what happens in the mormorning? Exactly. That kind of thing.
Yeah.
That's
how you know you're getting older.
Yeah, exactly.
Because when you're young, you don't care. You don't.
You're
just
like, that stuff at all.
Whatever, I'm fine, and you just start again. When you're, even like where we're at now, Tony and I talk about it all the time on Salty Language about. We have drinks and stuff, and then the next day we're like, man, why did I do that? It's like, I feel like garbage now. And as you get older, it takes longer to recover from those things, and you just keep, you've heard Tony questioning it over the last few months, like, why am I still doing this?
So the simple fact is, it is a choice.
Yeah, it is, yeah.
Like, it's just a choice, and and this is the thing that's really deceptive. I'm going to have a little alcohol tangent here right now, but the thing that's deceptive about it is that, there are so many things that we do when we act impulsively and it comes back around on us and it makes us feel bad. We're like, I ain't doing that again.
Yeah.
But for some reason, having some beverages, having some tasty beers, like Tony likes to say.
We're not real smart when it comes to that. Nope.
When Tony shares, I relate to him completely, because 9 out of 10 times everything is fine. And there's just that one time when I just didn't stop.
Yeah. And it just goes sideways at that one time.
And stuff happens. Yeah, and it's just a matter of like, okay, that's a choice.
And that's honestly, that's basically where I've gotten with it, is that when we go out, I usually will have, like I said, I'll have like 2 or 3. Occasionally I'll go past that. most of the time, like when we go out for trivia, a lot of times I have like 2. I'll either have 2 beers or I'll have a whiskey and a beer. And that's it. And I know if I do that, it's not gonna, like, I'm not gonna wake up feeling weird the next day because of my medicine being negated or any of that stuff. So, and, you know, I'm nowhere near a hangover, so I don't have to deal with any of that garbage, you know, so, and I still get to enjoy a whiskey that I like or a beer that I like without, you know, I don't have to drink all of it, you know, all the beers or all the whiskeys, you know, so. Yeah.
And lastly I'll say is, alcoholics don't have that choice.
Exactly. Yeah.
I never had that choice.
Yeah.
So when I see people who have the choice, and they, like Dave's, the fact that he came up to, I just love the fact that I have a friend that comes up to me and asks me, you know, my experience with this. I'm like, well, these are great friendships, because I didn't have that. I didn't have anyone to talk to about it.
Yeah.
I didn't have anyone that I knew that was in recovery, nothing like that, and all that. And so, you know, I'm grateful that I can help other people, and I admire the fact that he is thinking of it, you know, before something bad happens, and is weighing those things, because I didn't have that choice.
Right.
It wasn't even an option.
Right.
So.
And it is, you're right, it's good. If something's happened to him, he's on a medicine, I'm pretty sure you're not supposed to drink when you're on those kind of, the anti-seizure medicines. You know, again, I'm not judging, because you're not supposed to drink on antidepressants either. And, you know, but still, the fact that he's looking at it that way, like, hey, this kind of scared me / woke me up, whatever it is, you know, yeah. And I've noticed a lot of people, like, even if they weren't alcoholics, they just quit drinking at some point, and they were like, yeah, I was just wasting money and this, and, you know, and you hear someone always, because the questions always are, you know it, you know, don't you miss it? And I've so many people be like, not really. You know, it's one of those things that you hear cigarette smokers go, man, every day.
Oh, yeah.
For a while anyway, you know. You don't hear that as much with booze. At least I don't, you know. A lot of the people are like, no, actually, like you know, someone asks you that, you'd be like, no, I like where my life is now. Like, which would you prefer, that or where you are, you know, it's.
Well, yeah. Sharon, though, she misses beer still.
Yeah. Oh, no, I don't doubt it.
She'll tell me.
Yeah.
But, like, I don't have that reaction. Like, she's like, you really don't? And I'm like, no, I don't. She's like, I really miss beer still.
Yeah, and I could get that. Yeah. Because, like, if I were at that point, I would miss beer. And I would miss beer, and I would miss the, you know, like, I don't drink a lot of whiskey, but I do like it. You know, occasionally I like to have one, you know, or two. And, you know, so I would miss that, you know, it would be a shame if you, like with me, I can choose to not have any for a long time, or I can choose to have how many ever I want, and the next time, you know, I don't have to worry about the next day it being that I'm going to do it again, you know, so I fully appreciate that, and that's part of why I've gotten to where I am too, is I've seen enough people that have kind of cut it out of their lives. And they're like, yeah, I lost weight, I got more money, you know, it's, you know, it's true, that stuff's not cheap, you know?
Nope.
So, especially when you're not drinking. I was
extremely lazy. I'm sorry, what was that?
No, I said especially when you don't drink at home. You know, if you're out at the bars drinking, it adds up fast.
Oh, yeah. So I was extremely lazy. Other than that, my gym stops have been few and far between. I have gone, but it's been not. Last week I decided when I go, I go. If I don't, I don't. And I'm not going to beat myself up over it. I'm enjoying taking a little break. And, you know, Friday came along and I, you know, mowed the lawn and took the dogs for a walk. And other than that, I pretty much just, you know, turned into mulch on a couch, which was just fine by me.
Yep.
You know, it just is fun. I enjoyed it. It was when Sharon was in Salt Lake City, she came home, she's like, what'd you do? I'm like, a whole lot of nothing.
Yep.
You know, but I did have, you know what's weird is I had one night where this is, I don't know if this happens to you, but like, I came in the house, like the houses need to be vacuumed for a while. Sharon and I are not the tidiest human beings.
Yeah. Oh, I hate vacuuming, but that's because of my allergies. Otherwise, I would do it.
Yeah, and I just, and I see it, but I'm the kind, I move the furniture, I get every corner, I hit the baseboards. Once I start, I'm doing it, and I just
forget that
put
noise.
it off, right?
Yeah.
Oh yeah. No, Sharon does like the middle of the room, and then is done, right?
I do wherever the vacuum will reach. I'm not lifting stuff up. I'm not moving. If the vacuum can't get there, it doesn't need to be swept.
I had this weird thing where I got home from work and I walked into the kitchen and I just saw something had been spilled on the floor, and I'm just like, that's it, I'm done. And I'm pulling everything out of the floor, I'm washing, I scrub the kitchen floor, I grab the vacuum, and I'm going through the house, and the next thing you know, I've done it all. I put my carpet squares back down that had gotten wet, and I'm like, an hour and a half later, I'm just sweaty, but everything looks great, and I'm like, well, I don't know where that came from, but awesome.
I know that exact feeling, though. I've talked about it here before, where I'll look at, I use my desk as the constant example, whereas I'll look at my desk and be like, man, this thing's a mess, and meh, and then a couple weeks later, I'll look at it and be like, this has got to stop, and all of a sudden, all the cleaning.
And it's like one thing triggers it. You're like, that one Post-it note.
It's too much.
How dare you?
Yeah. Yep. And now everything has to go. Yeah.
Yep, exactly. Oh.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, actually, I was just looking at my desk again, and it's like, I just cleaned it like a couple weeks ago, like completely cleaned it. Like, I actually, lifted everything up and wiped, because I have a glass, desk. So, glass cleaner, wipe the whole thing down, and, stuff's just kind of strewn about again, so. I figure about a week or so from now, I'll just want to flip the desk over and start again. So, yeah.
That's it.
Yeah. But it's not just that, it's other stuff too. That's the way I always was, like you said, I would just be like, just kind of do minimums and whatnot. And then all of a sudden I'd be like, alright, this bathtub needs scrubbed, and it's like, and then it's like sparkly afterward, or whatever like that. Yeah. It's like I clean it, but it's like, you gotta put a thorough cleaning on stuff once in a while to, not be gross.
Exactly.
Yep.
Like, I disgust me.
Yeah, really, that's kind of what it gets to, yeah. I mean, the desk is more of a, after a certain point I start feeling claustrophobic with it. Because I feel like there's just too much around me, and it's like, okay, this is, I gotta open the space back up. So. Yeah. Sorry.
So that's about it for me. Got another gig this week that I'm looking forward to, and,
Yeah, that's
it's weird how, like, I have these great moments, and then I did have, like, a couple things come out completely sideways during the week.
Yeah.
And it's weird how I sit there and I go, is it realistic to think that I can always have, I felt a little guilty about having things come out sideways, but then I think about the other things that went really well.
Yeah.
And I think it actually kind of ties in with our topic tonight, which is, am I really perceiving my experience in life properly, or am I tweaking it the wrong way? Are those moments that I'm really happy about, my so-called wins for the week, are they getting in the way of where things do come out sideways, and I decide not to look at it critically? You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah. I didn't mention my win for the week would be that I was at the arena, and not so much during the event, because there's open. You can look anywhere and there's open. Everywhere. But when you go to leave, or you get up to go to where we were sitting, the bathroom was really close, actually. It was up like 3 short flights of stairs, and then to the left it was like directly there. So I didn't have to worry about a big deal there. But, when we first got there, and then when we go to leave, the place is just a mass of humanity, and navigating through that was frustrating. But even when we got done and we got into the parking garage, I wasn't like, I wasn't like, okay, good, I can see, again, open space, it didn't seem to bother me a whole lot. So that was a big deal for me. Whenever I have those moments, I'm really happy, because those take me a little while to get over when I feel that kind of tense. I need to see open space for a while. And the problem with something like that is you have all those people, then you get in the parking garage, which is usually a nightmare. But the parking garage at this place is usually, it's weird. You can usually get out of it pretty easily. It's not terrible, so that helps.
Sounds like you were in the moment quite a bit.
Yeah. I really felt like it. So yeah, that's the kind of stuff that would be my win for the week. So, yep. All right. Well, let's the article you were talking about, or the topic, I should say. I saw this earlier today, and it's from verywellmind.com. And it says it's called it's from over a year ago, but it's still something that is kind of timeless as far as things go. It's 10 cognitive biases that distort your thinking, which anyone who's listened to the show for any length of time knows that every week I try to sneak in some comment about distorted thinking, because it really was the major breakthrough in my therapy. That I think it's what opened the door to me being receptive to what was the work that I was going to have to put in, and that it also kind of floored me because I realized that I wasn't doing as well as I thought I was, and then it was, that's okay, but now it's time, it was time to right the ship. So, excuse me. The first one they have here, man, I can't stop doing that, is confirmation bias, which we've talked before on this show about. And if you're not familiar with it, you should really look it up and read about confirmation bias, because it affects you in life probably more than you realize it does. Where is it? It says it's based on finding that people tend to listen more often to information that confirms the beliefs they already have. Through this bias, people tend to favor information that confirms their previously held beliefs. It says this bias can be particularly evident when it comes to issues like gun control and global warming. Instead of listening to the opposing side and considering all of the facts in a logical and rational manner, people tend to simply look for things that reinforce what they already think is true. Which there was a study done, was it last year or the year before or a couple years ago? I don't remember. That was looking at politics, and people, it pointed out that basically conservatives tend to watch Fox News and that liberals tended to watch CNN or whatever more because it confirmed their bias, it says, sometimes, in many cases, people on two sides of an issue can listen to the same story and each will walk away with a different interpretation that they feel validates their existing point of view. If you need proof of that, all you have to do is read, I can't remember the name of the book now, dang it. It was a book written by a guy who used to be a stats guy for politics. And he talks about how basically you can take any set of numbers and argue it either way, essentially.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah.
And it, which I always knew anyway, but it's interesting the way he frames it, because he's like, this is how the other side did it, this is what we did. And sometimes some of it's like, wow, that's way more powerful when you word it differently. So, yeah. Like I said, there's a lot of things people probably don't even realize that they're walking into with a confirmation bias.
Now, would you consider also like looking at a list of, here are 10, ways that you might be an alcoholic, or that you might have anxiety, and going, well, I don't got 3.
Yeah, actually, I really think you could.
Confirmation bias?
I think it kind of is.
I think it is, isn't it?
Yeah. And, what's funny is I think it can work the opposite way too. I mean, I think maybe the best example of confirmation bias I can give is WebMD. People go on there thinking they have whatever, and then they find
the one that makes you feel good.
They find whatever it is they're looking for.
Yeah.
So yeah, but it's even something completely inane, like when I worked at a video store, half the people that walk up to the counter are like, you'll say, oh, you're getting this movie, and they're like, yeah, and they're like, is it any good? And if you say yes, you've made their day. Like, they're looking for someone who will agree with what they've done. And it's not necessarily confirmation bias, but it's kind of fits the same need a little bit in that if they walk up and they go, is this any good? And you go, not really, then
and they're like,
they look like they're hurt. Like you, because they thought it was a good movie, and then you've then told them, no, it's terrible. Which actually led me to basically tell people when they'd bring something up, I'd be like, oh, I heard it's good. I didn't see it though. And,
gotcha.
I didn't lie to them. If I heard something was bad, I wasn't like, oh yeah, it's great. But that is what people want. They want to walk up and they want you to tell them that this is a good movie because they want their choice to be reinforced.
Yeah.
That's really what it comes down to.
Yeah, they want some affirmation in their decision making.
Yeah.
Which
is fine.
It's great. I wish more people would do it on important things.
Right?
Right? That's one of the things with like 12-step programs is having some sort of a mentor or somebody that you bounce ideas off of. I find many times it's used more out of convenience, rather than out of any set. And it's like, well, okay, you decided to do this on your own. It didn't work out. So, and now you're coming to talk to me about it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that makes sense to me.
Because it's funny how it's like when it comes to a movie, we have no problem saying, "Hey, is this any good?"
Yep.
Versus saying, "Hey, do you think I have a problem?"
Yeah. Like, yes, I do. You should stop bringing all the Steven Seagal movies up.
Movies up here, yes.
Not really. It's funny, though, even with that, on a quick side note, it's like, I got to the point that, like, I'm at with a lot of stuff now. It's like, look, if you enjoy that, have at it. I don't, like, I wouldn't sit through it, but if you want to, hey, that's cool. So, whatever.
Yep.
But don't ask me to tell you it's a good movie, because that's not going to happen. So
we hit number 2?
Yeah.
That's number 2 is the hindsight bias. The hindsight bias is a common cognitive bias that involved... Is that a bad sentence? Yes, they use the past tense. All right. Is a common cognitive bias that involves the tendency of people to see events, even random ones, as more predictable than they are. In one classic psychology experiment, college students were asked to predict whether they thought then-nominee Clarence Thomas would be confirmed to the U.S. Supreme Court. Prior to the Senate vote, 58% of the students thought Thomas would be confirmed. The students were polled again following Thomas's confirmation, and a whopping 78% of students said they had believed Thomas would be confirmed. This tendency to look back on events and believe that we knew it all along is surprisingly prevalent. Following exam, students often look back on the questions and think, of course I knew that, even though they missed it the first time around. Investors look back and believe that they could have predicted when tech companies would become dominant forces. The hindsight bias occurs for a combination of reasons, including our ability to misremember previous predictions, our tendency to view events as inevitable, and our tendency to believe we could have foreseen certain events. And we had a great example of this week in the World Cup with when Mexico beat Germany 1-0 in an amazing game, and the coach had a big interview about how they had planned this for months, like 4 months in the planning.
Sure.
And, right. And it sounds really convincing because it's like he talks about what they wanted to do, how it played out, and how they implemented it. Okay. But at any moment, something else could have happened.
Yeah.
That could have changed that.
Mm-hmm.
At any time, that Germany put another goal in, because there was a shot that literally was like, 6 more inches and boom, it was a goal. And now it would have changed how Germany reacted. But, that's what coaches do. They set up a game plan, you stick to it, and then there's luck, that kind of thing.
Yep.
But the fact of the matter is that interview is very easy from that position.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
And he wouldn't have come out beforehand and publicly said, this is our strategy.
Yeah.
So it's a great example of it. For myself, this one's easy to catch.
Mm-hmm.
at least, boy, I hope it is. Like, to me, I think it's pretty disingenuous to sit there and say that you knew something was going to happen when it didn't, you know. However, I like to use the hindsight bias, and this I readily use it to, let's just say, not so much that I talk about it on here a bunch where I go, if I look at how I got sober, there's a series of events that I purposely connect together to share a story.
Yeah.
And, you know, do I say I was meant to get sober? No, but I find it quite amazing when you put these events together.
While you were drinking, that was your plan all along.
Exactly, yeah. This is going to happen, it's not, and I don't use it as a point of, I was on some destiny or things were destined. I look at it as more of like, I enjoy with a little 20/20 hindsight finding a path that explains why I did why I'm where I'm at, and it's more from the standpoint of and why I should stick to it. And yes, it's no different than a horoscope or anything like that. There's no basis in fact to it.
True. Yep.
And it's a lot of fun to say, wow, this is, because any number of things could have changed it.
Yeah, definitely.
And that is absolute hindsight bias, but I don't use it to delude myself. I do it more to, let's just say, support a positive thing.
Yeah. I think, too, some people will do this to, you know how, like, well, with pretty much anything you're going to do, like a choice you've got to make or whatever, you have a gut feeling, right? You have that initial feeling that you're like, this is what I should do. And, if you hesitate on it a lot of times, you kind of, sometimes you'll flip back and forth. And this way is like, like you'll hear people say all the time, like, I knew I should have trusted my gut on this one, kind of a thing. And don't get me wrong, there are times when it does work that way. To where, like, your initial thought, you go the opposite way because it seems more logical. And then you're like, man, I should have went the other way, But to say, I knew I should have, that's where the, like, if you went, I should have went the other way, it's like, well, okay, that's, you can make your arguments about whatever there, but, this is the one you catch a lot. I love the Clarence Thomas story, how it was a 20% difference between before and after.
Huge.
That's a big number. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I'm not surprised. I've been listening on different podcasts and reading a little bit about, like, how the brain is being studied now and how memories are, seen as fabricated, not remembered. Like they're not in a file in your head. Your brain literally paints a new picture, So, as we're going more and more that direction, these kind of things surprise me less and less because we're realizing, much like if you ever watch a show called Brain Games, they constantly point out how often your brain lies to you. Because your brain tries to take shortcuts or it's trying to figure things out in the most efficient way. But a lot of times it's kind of like a digital camera where, like, an actual camera captures what is actually seen. A digital camera fills in the blanks, basically. Yep. And your brain does the same thing. It works just like that. And, that's where we can get ourselves into trouble. Like, if there's a blank, oh yeah, I knew he was going to be confirmed.
Yeah.
You go back and look. I said it. Alright, let's see. What's the next one? The next one's the anchoring bias, which this one I had never heard of.
Yeah, me neither.
It says, we also tend to be overly influenced by the first piece of information that we hear, a phenomenon referred to as the anchoring bias or anchoring effect. For example, the first number voiced during a price negotiation typically becomes the anchoring point from which all further negotiations are based. Researchers have even found that having participants choose a completely random number can influence what people guessed when asked unrelated questions, such as how many countries there are in Africa. This tricky little cognitive bias doesn't just influence things like salary or price negotiations. Doctors, for example, can become susceptible to the anchoring bias when diagnosing patients. The physician's first impressions of the patient often create an anchoring point that can sometimes incorrectly influence all subsequent diagnostic assessments. If you ever see a new doctor and she asks you to tell her your whole story, even though everything should be in your records, this is why. It is often the physician, or analogously anyone trying to get to the bottom of a problem, who discovers a vital piece of information that was overlooked as a result of the anchoring bias. So, yeah, after reading that one, I was like, I never would have thought of that with with doctors. The first example is the one I would have thought of, which is, a number in a negotiation, being the anchoring point. That makes, that's one we all see probably a lot.
This is one that I think, I definitely suffer from this. I can think of times, especially at my work, where I need to troubleshoot something, and in a way I go with my gut, and that all of a sudden becomes, and at that point I have now, I'm going to miss some things. Because I'm not completely open-minded to it. I think if the idea is to go with your gut and then disprove it, then that's more of a scientific method. But I think I do tend to do that. I also tend to set opinions probably too soon as well. Not locked in, as in I can't be swayed, but more of I take a position that feels right to me. Yeah. And which is probably, because, I've just found that being completely wishy-washy doesn't really lead to a good investigation.
No, you're right, it doesn't. That's why you don't see wishy-washy reporters very often, or at least that are considered, the best of what they do, They're the ones that are generally, that'll keep asking the questions, Even though they're not getting answers, they'll keep asking the questions, Yeah,
and I don't, that's why I guess this is, I'm sure with most of these biases, they're just any of my character defects where they can either be an asset or a liability.
Yeah, true.
That we can use it, you can use it for good or for great harm.
Right? I'm just curious to see, looking back when we're done with this list, if we're going to go, you know what, we were just using confirmation bias the whole time while we were looking at this list. Because we were just looking at how it identifies with us.
Yeah, well, I mean, think about it. Right off the bat, we see a point. I lock myself into something.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's a good one. That's one I wouldn't think about very often.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, if you told me to write down the way I think my brain creates a bias for, type of thing, that was one I would never come up with, Yeah,
at all.
Yeah. So, I'm glad it was on there.
Yeah. So our next one we kind of touched on already. Number 4, the misinformation effect. Our memories of particular events also tend to be heavily influenced by things that happened after the actual event itself, a phenomenon known as the misinformation effect. A person who witnesses a car accident or crime might believe that their recollection is crystal clear, but researchers have found that memory is surprisingly susceptible to even very subtle influences. In one classic experiment by memory expert Elizabeth Loftus, people who watched a video of a car crash were then asked one of 2 slightly different questions. How fast were the cars going when they hit each other, or how fast were the cars going when they smashed into each other? When the witnesses were then questioned a week later, the researchers discovered that this small change in how questions were presented led participants to recall things that they did not actually witness. When asked whether they had seen any broken glass, those who had been asked the smashed into version of the question were more likely to report incorrectly that they had seen broken glass.
I just listened to a podcast this past week, actually. I can't remember which one it was, though. And a guy was talking about... actually, I told you about it, I think, last time we talked, where there was a guy who does DNA testing, but he was pointing out, he was proving that people had said that someone had done something, and he, through DNA testing, proved that it was not possible. And basically, like, he's like, what we went in to prove essentially was that the human mind lies. Even eyewitness testimony is not reliable. And that's exactly what this bias is. You know, because it's so true. Yeah. And this also, that's a perfect example of what a good lawyer will do for you. Or a good pollster will do for a politician. You tweak the question slightly. Yep, very slightly. You lead without it being obvious that you're leading. Like you said, like it says, you know, if I go, hey, how fast was the car going when it smashed into you? People, you know, I'd love to see the numbers of someone watching that. I'd love to see what the speed limit estimates were for both, because I'll bet they're higher too with the smashed into you. You know.
Yep.
So, yeah, this is one that fascinates me, and this is one where I've been trying to read as much as I can on stuff, because it kind of sets a lot of things on its side. You know, it's like all these things we thought were ironclad and this, and it's like, maybe not, you know?
Well, it bums me out a lot, because think about how many people are like in jail or, you know, in prison because of an eyewitness testimony. Mm-hmm. Well, and knowing how... That guy I was just talking about, actually, he was one of the initial people as part of the, what's it called? The Innocence Project or something like that? Yes.
Where they go back and they look at cases where people are like, you know, swear they're innocent kind of a thing. And, you know, when it looks like they may be telling the truth, and they go back and try to help get them out of jail or whatever.
Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you there.
Oh, no, it's fine.
Actually, I did. I meant to do it from the very beginning of the podcast. All of this led to... No.
Well played, sir.
Yeah, my evil laugh just leads to coughing. Sweet.
It's you're so intimidating.
Yeah.
You're being evil and hacking.
And hacking, yeah. Okay, where were we? Oh, the active observer bias is the next one. The way we perceive others and how we attribute their actions hinges on a variety of variables, but it can be heavily influenced by whether we are the actor or the observer in a situation. When it comes to our own actions, we are often far too likely to attribute things to external influences. You might complain that you botched an important meeting because you had jet lag, or that you failed an exam because the teacher posed too many trick questions. When it comes to explaining others' actions, however, we're far more likely to attribute their behaviors to internal causes. A colleague screwed up an important presentation because he's lazy and incompetent, not because he also had jet lag. A fellow student bombed a test because she lacks diligence and intelligence, and not because she took the same test as you with all those trick questions.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
This is one that's really, I think that's one that's really, you know, at least for myself, worth kind of keeping an eye on.
Yeah.
Yeah, especially when I'm attributing things. Because I understand those ideas of, like, you know, well, we talked about, you know, men and women recently, and how they react to situations in different ways, and one of the things is typically, you know, externalizing versus internalizing.
Mm-hmm.
And that men tend to externalize, women tend to internalize. And I think a lot of this is like, are you being consistent with your thought process?
Yeah.
You know, are you internalizing in this way, but then externalizing in another?
Mm-hmm. Well, and that's the thing, you know, it's like, if you're willing to say, well, I bombed the interview because of jet lag, and someone else bombs it, you should also allow them that maybe they had jet lag or something else, you know, so, you know, my brother and I were actually just talking a little bit about that the other day. Like, we were talking about, you know, how a lot of people will complain when you go to a place, if you give them cash and the cashier, like, pauses before they give you change, and a lot of people are like, really, this is the simplest thing ever. Mm-hmm. And it's like, but you don't know their story, you know, you don't know, maybe they have struggle with math, maybe they have a learning deficiency. Maybe they have head trauma. You just, whatever. Yeah. Maybe they just don't know how to make change.
It's true.
But you would want someone to give you the benefit of the doubt. So, it's only right to give it all the way around.
Well, that's really a great example of is when, and it really shows how this is a very self-centered bias.
Yeah.
How it's the factor of our own existence that determines whether we are patient or not.
Right.
When we're on the other side, we want all the patience in the world from those facing us. But when we're, reversing the roles, suddenly we have none.
Yeah.
Because our particular, circumstances have priority.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Yeah. That was the way I read that one, was the whole time it was just the person in the office that puts everybody down, is more of the way I saw it, and it's like, don't be that person. Try to give everybody at least some consideration. Now look, sometimes you may not be wrong. Maybe that is the reason, is they are incompetent, but you know.
I think there's a reason why, there's old Bible verses talking about, treat others as you would have them, treat you.
Yeah.
Pretty much what they're talking about.
Yeah, and I mean,
interesting.
Anyone who's listened to the show for a while knows that's kind of a thing we all kind of go by anyway, is really trying to, and it works both ways. We've mentioned before the, treat yourself as how you treat your friends when it comes to, if they do something wrong and you're comforting to them, don't beat yourself up for the same thing. Yep. This is the flip of that. If you both do the same thing or have the same outcome, don't be nice to yourself and rude to somebody else about it. What if you're incompetent and you're just claiming it was jealous?
Now who's the jerk?
Yeah. The other person, because they should have given you no, anyway.
Exactly, yeah. All right, our sixth one is the false consensus effect. People also have a surprising tendency to overestimate how much other people agree with their own beliefs, behaviors, attitudes, and values, an inclination known as the false consensus effect. This can lead people not only to incorrectly think that everyone else agrees with them, it can sometimes lead them to overvalue their own opinions. Researchers believe that the false consensus effect happens for a variety of reasons. First, the people we spend the most time with, our family and friends, do often tend to share very similar opinions and beliefs. Because of this, we start to think that this way of thinking is a majority opinion, even when we are with people who are not among our group of family and friends. Another key reason this cognitive bias trips us up so easily is that believing that other people are just like us is good for our self-esteem. It allows us to feel normal and maintain a positive view of ourselves in relation to other people.
The old need to fit in. No. It's, that one kind of is, what do you call it? Like with movies and stuff, you'll see that a lot, where people will, everybody thinks this is good, Yeah. And it's like, but, no, I don't think this is good. But someone else is like, well, everyone else does, oh, okay. But yeah, again, this is a really selfish one. Most of these are actually, but that one is also because, again, you're looking for confirmation that your opinion is, the powerful opinion. You don't want to be in the minority generally with, or on the outside. You want to be part of the group because of, just human nature to fit in. Yeah,
I tend to notice it. Sharon, a lot of times, because I listen to the news a lot, she'll walk in and she'll be like, is this really a thing? Because we are mostly surrounded with people that have a certain viewpoint in life. And she'll admit it, that, going, is this really, she'll hear something on the news, like, look, do people really believe it? I'm like, yeah, they do.
Yeah, they do, yeah.
Whatever it is. And it's just a matter of circumstances that, we're around people that, feel this way.
Right. Much like we talked about, the news and stuff earlier, people, we also tend to gravitate toward people who have similar opinions to us.
Yeah, and that's why I try not to do that too much. I get comments on my Facebook page all the time about some of the political, the people and their political opinions that some of my quote unquote friends have, and that why do I, have them? And I'm like, well, I actually do, as much as it's, if one of them decides to leave and stop participating, I'm not exactly going to cry about it, but I appreciate the fact that they're there giving another opinion, because otherwise things would get rather boring rather quickly.
Yeah.
And I do happen to learn something, even if it's just in confirmation bias. Like, here's one thing, in a lot of these political conversations, like we already talked about, sides are generally taken right off the bat.
Yeah.
I may not have really good support for my side, or I may not have really good support to argue somebody else, but in the process I learned something. Now the question is am I learning what I want to learn, with confirmation bias, or am I testing my beliefs?
Yeah.
And, I can honestly say there have been times where I went, okay, wow, I never thought about it from that standpoint.
Yeah.
And the only way that's going to happen is if I'm open to, not having a herd mentality, basically.
Yeah. And I try to be the same way as long as the other person is also trying to be the same way. Like I've gotten to where I don't want to have conversations like that with someone who is shut off. Like if your mind's completely made up and you're not even willing to discuss it, then no, I don't want to argue with somebody, because that doesn't do anybody any good. Okay, we sit here, we yell at each other, or we type in all caps. What have we accomplished? Nothing, Yep,
so, exactly.
I actually have gotten to where, in my head, I essentially have put people like that into the toxic category. Because they tend to just inflame. And I just don't need that, That's my choice. Obviously everyone's welcome to do whatever they want, but but yeah, I've seen some of the posts on your page, and I've actually seen posts from the other, or from a differing viewpoint than mine on your page, and gone, I hadn't thought about that. And, so it's one of those things that I like it. I want people to have differing opinions. That's a good thing, because that means that's that's the check and balance of something. Is. Like, okay, well, let's see how this tests with the people, essentially. Alright, the next one here is the halo effect. Researchers have found that students tend to rate good-looking teachers as smarter, kinder, and funnier than less attractive instructors. This tendency for our initial impression of a person to influence what we think of them overall is known as the halo effect. The cognitive bias can have a powerful impact in the real world. For example, job applicants perceived as attractive and likable are also more liable to be viewed as competent, smart, and qualified for the job. Also known as the physical attractiveness stereotype, or the what is beautiful is good principle, we are either influenced by or use the halo to influence others almost every day. Think of a product marketed on TV by a well-dressed, well-groomed, and confident woman versus a woman who is poorly dressed and mumbling. Which appearance will be more likely to prompt you to go out and buy the product? That example's a little funky because that's more based on confidence. I understand what they're going for, but, if you took the same person and one mumbles and one speaks clearly, which one's going to sell you the product? So I don't know that it's quite what they were going for, but I get what they're trying to do there.
Yeah. I really don't like this. I just don't.
I hate
this
it
idea.
Too. It's so true. I mean, it's so prevalent, and all you need to, go to anything aimed at guys when they have pretty girls working booths at conventions, or, the concept of Hooters is proof of this, essentially. That, people see someone as attractive or sexualized or whatever, and that makes it better, you know? And it doesn't, because I've met plenty of smart people who were attractive, and plenty that were, maybe rivals with a box of bricks. So. Yeah.
this is one that I really don't want to have. And,
but we all do. Yeah. We try real hard not to.
Yep. And as long, I guess as long as I'm trying to be aware of it,
yeah,
that's good.
This is one
I really don't want. Yeah,
this is one that I think would be fun for everyone to test. Become aware of this.
Yeah.
When you're at the grocery store, if there's 2 lanes open, look at which one do you go into. Is it only based on the length of the line or how the line's moving, or do you also maybe pick the one with the prettier cashier or the more handsome cashier, or what, however you want to word it? Because that happens all the time. You'll see there'll be a guy and a woman working the cash register, and you'll see the guy walk over to the woman, and you'll see it over and over and over, for no real reason other than, they want to go over there and suck their gut in and pretend like she's interested in them. Again, there's a reason why a lot of bartenders are very attractive, because they can make a lot of money.
Yep.
Yeah.
At least on this one, I can honestly say that when I have all the lines to choose from at the grocery store, I go for the one by the person that annoys me the least, based on past experience.
Right.
Regardless of what they look like.
Liz, once you have your own, a store you go to regularly, there's generally, there's a couple, when I go to the local store here, that if their line's open, I'm not even going to lie. I've acted like I needed to go get something else to walk out of line to get back into another line. Yeah,
Yep.
Because I'm like, this one talks a lot, or this one's just annoying.
Exactly,
or, yeah, and I feel like a jerk when I do it. Because, they're probably just trying to make their day better, because it's a very repetitive job, but yeah, that's, that one's one that, like I said, everyone listening, really pay attention to it. Like, every time you have to make those kind of decisions, whether it's at the store or whatever, see how many times you choose the more attractive person when you're not, at the grocery store may not be the best example, because again, most people I think there go by what line is the shortest, or what the person in front of you would have in their cart, or, is this line moving really fast and this one's not moving at all, Yep. I think there's more factors, but there's a lot of stuff, like I said, if you have 2 windows open somewhere at a bank or whatever, and do you go to the more attractive one, or do you go to the other one, and why? And it's like, we all know why, but yeah. So this is one we all need to work on, but it's funny because I don't think we ever will, because we just want to look at attractive people, I mean, true. You can't, anyway.
Our 8th bias is the self-serving bias. Another tricky cognitive bias that distorts your thinking is known as the self-serving bias. Basically, people tend to give themselves credit for successes, but lay the blame for failures on outside causes. When you do well on a project, you probably assume that it's because you worked hard, but when things turn out badly, you are more likely to blame it on circumstances or bad luck. This bias does serve an important role. It helps protect our self-esteem. However, it can also lead to faulty attributions, such as blaming others for our own shortcomings. And this is definitely one of those ones that is a character defect that can serve you in a good way, but when it is allowed to be out of control, can make you into a complete and total utter narcissist.
Yeah, it really
it's
can.
Like, yeah, and that's like the more I started owning my part in things.
Yep.
I just, when I run into people like this, and I've run into plenty of people like this, I can't even be around them.
Yeah.
I absolutely can't be around them. Because everything is somebody else's fault.
Yep.
Every reason for something happened was some external force. They never, ever own it. And then to hear them be completely disingenuous and hypocritical and start taking credit for everything when other people were involved.
Yeah.
It just disgusts me.
It's funny because...
And I have a real hard time with it.
For a long time, I did part of that. I didn't take credit for others' work, because that always would bug me big time. That's why I never liked working in groups in school, because generally I was one of the ones that would bust my hump, and somebody else is getting credit off of my hard work, and they just coast, but it's more, but I was the type for a long time. I've tried, and I'm still fighting it, to where I would blame something for something. You know, like I wouldn't just say, you know, this is my part of it, or this is why I didn't do this. You know, and, like I said, I've gotten a lot better about it to where, you know, like even in art, for a while, I'd look at, you know, the quality of what I was putting out, and I'd be like, well, I don't have time, I'm working all these hours, I got this, you know, just blaming everything else instead of going, no, you just aren't sitting down and putting the work in. Like, this is it, you have the time, it's right there, you just aren't, when you are sitting there drawing, you're half-assing it. You're not really trying, you know, and so, like I said, I've tried really hard to get better at that, and I think I've gotten pretty good at it. I try really hard not to blame, especially other people. You know, I might still blame various stuff, but, you know, I try really hard to, like you said, just look at it and go, how did I influence this? How can I get the result I would like to get next time, you know, or whatever. Or how can I just not be a jerk next time, you know?
Yeah. Well, there's so much of this that you, when something goes wrong and you have to explain it, you do need to have some reasons.
Yeah.
But reasons generally aren't blaming outside forces, other people, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
You know, people are going to want to say why you think this happened, or kind of thing.
Yeah.
And what this is to me, whenever I'm around someone that instantly gets defensive in conflict,
yeah,
and instantly starts sound, it's just right off the bat, I'm like, okay, I'm going to have some problems here.
Yeah.
Because, you know, it's just hard for me because I've done a lot of work on owning it.
Yeah.
A lot.
And this is one of those where it's really tough because when you do this kind of stuff, it's like, you know, I remember I always used to tell Jen, like, she'd get frustrated because someone would behave a certain way. And I'm like, you can't put your values on them. They're not going to behave the way you do. And it's similar with this in that you've put in that work, but everyone's not going to behave that way. So it's going to be frustrating.
Yeah, other people haven't.
Yeah.
Yep. And then I have to, as I'm just this ties back into the old, it's easier to ask for permission.
Yeah, true.
You know, the fact that if you want to do something, you know, you don't want to go up and ask him to do this. It's easier to just do it and then later say, "Oh, I'm sorry."
Yeah,
you know, because it's just easier. And this is in a lot of ways the same way. It's just instantly being, you know, defensive. It's not being, you know, it's not being honest with yourself and with the other people around you is how I see it.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. Okay, what's the next one here? The availability heuristic. After seeing several news reports of car thefts in your neighborhood, you might start to believe that such crimes are more common than they are. This tendency to estimate the probability of something based on how many examples really or readily come to mind is known as the availability heuristic. It is essentially a mental shortcut designed to save us time when we're trying to determine risk. The problem with relying on this way of thinking is that it often leads to poor estimates and bad decisions. Smokers who have never known someone to die of a smoking-related illness, for example, might underestimate the health risks of smoking. In contrast, if you have 2 sisters and 5 neighbors who have had breast cancer, you might believe it is even more common than statistics tell us. Which, like the 24-hour news cycle is a great example of this. I don't know how many people it's like, you know, you didn't used to hear about this much cancer, and it's like, it was probably there. It just, we didn't hear about it 24 hours a day, or we didn't hear about, take your pick on your topic, you know, whatever it is. We didn't hear about it 24 hours a day from 15 or 30 different sources, you know, plus social media on top of that, you know, it's,
you
know, it's why crime seems really bad in some areas when it's not, you know.
When we were when the whole gun thing happened, I heard over and over again, back in my day, we were the student okay, let's see. Quick little Google search. Yeah. How many school shootings have there been in the last 100 years? And it was like, wow.
Yeah.
People get shot in school a lot, and it's been going on for a long time. But talk about memory and all those other things. You know, I had someone just recently, give a completely local anecdotal argument. Oh, I haven't seen that happen too much lately. I'm like, come on, man. Yeah. Like, you're what you've noticed neighborhood is not indicative of the country.
Right. Yeah, that's also very accurate. Yeah.
And it's the same basic thing. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's true that we do it with, nobody I know has experienced this. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And at least this one's rather simple to overcome, which is, actually, I take that back. Nobody wants to actually, get past most of these biases.
No.
Because they work for them. What am I talking about?
Yeah. Exactly.
They don't.
Yeah.
They don't.
No.
People believe they just do.
Yeah.
And I'm not trying to say I'm superior or something like that, but I'm trying, there's a reason why you bring this up every week.
Yeah, exactly.
I need to hear it.
Well, and again, this isn't just a mental health thing. This is everybody, or not everybody.
Thinking thing.
This is these are all really common that I'm sure every one of these we've said, if you're listening, you've probably gone, either I do that or I know someone who does that with every one of these, Yeah. And it comes back to the thing that you talk about is that once you start realizing these and observing them, it will ruin relationships. It does. It really does. It really can, because you really can start seeing, I've seen how toxic some people are because of looking at distorted thinking and realizing that, much like we were talking earlier, where we all know that person or people who blame everybody else for everything, and that's all they do. Again, that was me. If you go back and listen to early episodes of Salty Language, when we're talking about stuff, that was me then. That's part of why, that's around the time I just started getting help, and I wasn't in therapy yet. I was just on my first antidepressant around the time we started that podcast. And I would blame everybody else for everything instead of taking the fact that I'm the one instigating a lot of the things that are negative in my life. Whereas now I don't do that as much. I've fought against it. I've worked really hard to not be that person anymore. So it's, it's, I don't know, but it's something you really got to work on to get rid of some of these biases, because they're so easy to fall into, but that's what I was saying. I kind of lost my place, but, was, with people who just blame everybody else all the time. It's I can't be around that anymore. When I'm around that now, I just want to strangle the person. Or realistically, what I want to do is go, look, you're me 5 years ago, 7 years ago now, seriously, let me save you all this time and just go get help, you need help, and, but you can't do that, people have to do things on their own and when they're ready and whatever, but
everyone has their own path.
Yep. Even if you do want to strangle them.
Yeah, exactly. And our last one is the optimism bias. Another cognitive bias that has its roots in the availability heuristic is known as the optimism bias. Essentially, we tend to be too optimistic for our own good. We overestimate the likelihood that good things will happen to us while underestimating the probability that negative events will impact our lives. We assume that events like divorce, job loss, illness, and death happen to other people. So what impact does this sometimes unrealistic optimism really have on our lives? Well, suddenly you realize somebody else is elected president. No, I'm sorry, I didn't say that. It can lead people to take health risks like smoking, eating poorly, or not wearing a seatbelt. The bad news is that research has found that this optimism bias is incredibly difficult to reduce. There's good news, however. This tendency towards optimism helps create a sense of anticipation for the future, giving people the hope and motivation they need to pursue their goals. So while cognitive biases can distort our thinking and sometimes lead to poor decisions, they are not always so bad. And I think that last point is all too true. And especially with this one, I have chosen to have an optimism bias in my life.
Yeah.
I prefer who I am this way.
Mm-hmm.
I used to be way more negative, way more sarcastic, way more sardonic, and just, and there's a reason I drank a lot.
Yeah. Well, same here. And I mean, even with the drinking, that there was a reason I drank in heavy quantities for a while, and it was because I was just miserable, and that's how I medicated. So, even if it wasn't in the massive quantities, it was a lot. It was, 6 nights a week, 5 nights a week, it was I had to at least take the edge off kind of stuff. So it's, I get it a little bit. It's not to the extreme yours was, but it's like, I understand part of that, it's interesting to me because there's so many times when you're watching the news or something, or I should say. And, I'll just have the thought pop into my head, like, why would someone do that? And then it's like, why? It's because it's not going to happen to me. It's going to happen to someone. There's a reason that people were not using condoms, even though they was like, hey, AIDS is a big thing and that you probably don't want it. They were like, it's not going to happen to me, and it happened to a lot of people, I'm sure, that said it's not going to happen to me, and things like that happen all the time. And I'm not saying you got to like freak out and go completely, down that path either, to where it's like, well, I got to be ready for this, and if I go on a plane, I'm going to die. And, that's a whole bad path in its own. So the optimism bias in this situation is a way better path than the other way. You just have to be careful you don't go too far with it to where, like we were talking before, to where you just start ignoring things that are that maybe you should be paying attention to in your life, because nope, not going to look at it. I only talk about happy things, or whatever.
And I used to just be really like annoyed by people who are like, don't you see it? Don't you see what's happening? That kind of stuff. Like, how can you be so, oblivious to this, blah, blah, blah. And it's so funny when people just say, cause I just don't care.
Yeah. Oh man.
And I still couldn't believe it, but now I'm okay with it.
Yeah.
It's like,
it used to drive me crazy, when me and Jen would talk, because I was very much that, I'm always looking for something around the corner, like something bad's gonna happen. And she was very much the sun's bright, it's a great day, and, I'm like, yeah, but it's gonna rain later, and she's like, but it isn't now, and that was kind of the differences in our personality, to where she was always looking for a reason to smile, I was always looking for a reason to run, and, it was so frustrating. Now it's not. Now, like I've said before, now I'm the annoying one to other people, and I'm not going to apologize for it because it's made my life better. I've still got a long ways to go, but I definitely like the way I think now versus the way I was thinking, because that was just a constant cloud over my head, and that's just no way to live. I'd rather have sunshine over my head all the time and blow smoke up my own butt than live in the other world, where I'm in the upside down all the time.
Yeah, and there's really, I like the last paragraph in here where it talks about, what I said, which is, these are all things that in the right proportions, when you're being the right size for the situation, they're but they can get out of control.
Yeah.
And to just be mindful of it, because you can end up, fooling yourself.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And yes, there's a reason we have these. They protect us, and I liked how they use this. This protects our self-esteem. Mm-hmm. If everything all the time is negative, meaning you're basically beating yourself up all the time.
Yeah.
If you're always looking in, this protects us. It helps us, if we couldn't let go of those little mistakes we make on a daily basis, if they just constantly built up, if I couldn't forget about that, mess up that I did a month ago, if it was like it happened yesterday, I would be miserable.
Yeah, because
I'd be doing anything I could.
Yeah, you'd be ruminating all the time. And that
all
is
the time.
No way to live,
Yeah.
That's the person who is constantly living in their regrets, essentially, living in the past,
exactly.
And yeah. So I want to read this last paragraph because I thought this is something that I think is important to have in here too, which is the cognitive biases above are common and collectively influence much of our thoughts and ultimately decision making. Many of these biases are inevitable. We simply don't have time to evaluate every thought and every decision for the presence of any bias. But understanding these biases is very helpful in learning how they can lead us to poor decisions in life. So it's one of those, I wanted to point that out, that it's, with any of the distorted thinking stuff, whether it's this stuff we talked about whenever we do, it's gonna happen. It is going to happen. Other people are going to do it. It's okay. You just, what I do now is if I catch myself doing something like this, I basically in my head I put up a red flag kind of thing. Learn from this, basically, so next time I'm in that scenario, I try not to do the same thing, and doesn't always work because none of this is always going to work. Nothing we talk about, nothing a therapist, it's not going to work every time. Breathing exercises are great. They work for me a lot of the time. They don't work every time. Sometimes you end up in a panic attack and you can't stop it. So it's same with this kind of stuff is, like we were talking about with the Halo one, you can fight it all you want, but I bet you'll find yourself doing it somewhere without meaning to.
Yep. Yeah, it's absolutely true.
And
they're actually fun exercises, and it goes back to something we talk about a lot, is that, check your motives. Pause.
Yeah.
What is your motivation for something? Are you being self-centered? Are you looking at other people's perspectives in whatever the situation is? Mm-hmm. Are you being honest with yourself?
Yeah.
Along with others. And I think, motivation, it's like, why am I choosing this path? I think is always a good question to ask.
Yeah. And if you do catch yourself in the middle of one, can I change this now?
Yeah.
I mean, cause sometimes you can. Like if you find yourself walking towards a more attractive cashier at the grocery store, you could be like, you know what? I'm going over here this time. No, or whatever. But that sometimes if you catch yourself in the moment with some of these, you can kind of, redirect on the move or on the go there. You don't have to think about it for next time or, study what you've done or learn from it. You can just change right then. Or if you catch someone, you blaming someone else for something, or doing they're just incompetent, like, whoa, time out.
Yep.
Maybe they're not. So, whatever. But it's all a lot of work. Like you said, this is the kind of stuff to me that it's nice to just, I like reading this stuff, even if I'm not cause again, I'm not going to sit with every thought I have and run it through all these different things. That's impossible. But if I remember something, if it kind of there's just sometimes when you're in the middle of something, one of these things we've talked about will just come screaming at your face and you're like, oh yeah. That's your chance to learn, grow.
There it is. Yep.
So.
That was a good list.
Yeah, I thought so too. Those are, again, reinforcing the distorted thinking. This that we just read will be in the show notes, or the link to it. And also, there's a lot of, on this website, underneath the article, there's a lot of related things where they explain some of these biases, or they explain them a little more in detail instead of just giving you a paragraph on them. They talk a little more about it. So if something in there is interesting to you, you can read more about it, but you don't have to take my word for it. I just felt like I was doing a reading rainbow thing right there.
It's hilarious.
Oh man. All right, well, I guess we have to do all this other stuff now. As Jen would say, if you'd like to continue the conversation with us, you can reach us on our website at thecrazylifepodcast.weebly.com. You can email us at thecrazylifepodcast@outlook.com. You can find the show on Twitter at thecrazylifepod. You can find Jen on Twitter at Jen's Crazy Life, and that's Jen with a G. And how about you, Heno?
You can find me on Twitter at Ida Heno. You can find me on Facebook, Heno Heiter, and you can find me also on Messenger under that name.
Right. You can also find the show on Facebook, our group at facebook.com/group/crazylifepodcast. You can find me on Twitter at Stunami. You can find my other podcast, Salty Language, at salty_language on Twitter or saltylanguage.com. That show is not safe for work. Excuse me, we're part of the Tangent Bound Network, which can be found at tangentboundnetwork.com. So please go check out other shows that are part of that network, and maybe you'll find something else that you like. We'd really appreciate it if you're using Apple Podcasts, if you rate, review, and subscribe. That helps us get, move up in searches and what have you. If you're using Stitcher, Spotify, or another podcast app, please like or share within the app, whatever, the option it gives you. For the same reason, that just helps us out and such. I feel like I'm forgetting something in the links, but I'm pretty sure I didn't. Okay, so if you, just like,
I just thought of the Salty Language going outro.
Oh man, I was doing so good too, and then I just right into the wall.
It's okay.
Yeah, it's not your fault. I don't want to make light of that. That's not. I shouldn't. Yeah, that's terrible. Anyway, if you feel as though if you feel that you may need help, please reach out to someone. There's all sorts of resources out there for you. There's a bunch over on our the notes page on our Facebook group, or if you contact any one of us, we can try to point you the right way, the best we can. So, but definitely try to reach out for to somebody. And on the flip side of that, if you're, reach out to someone that, like I've said on here the last few weeks, especially if they've gone through recent, loss, whether it's, a family member, divorce, their job, just any sort of major loss like that, or some sort of trauma, reach out, make sure they're doing okay. Reach out to the friend that is the one that's always okay, because there's a good chance they're not always okay. There's a good mask to put up. That's the mask I used to put up. So I'm very familiar with it. And if you feel that you may harm yourself or others, or you're having those kind of thoughts, definitely reach out to somebody. Get a friend to come sit with you. Try not to be alone, or get on one of these like crisis lines or something like that. Or if you can, have someone take you to the hospital and tell them you're having a mental health crisis. If you have insurance, there's a good chance there's a number on the back of your card for mental health emergencies too. So, please, don't try to deal with it yourself. It's just, we can all be really strong and still need help. Even the strongest person's not going to be able to punch through certain things. They're going to have to get a hammer or, something to help them with it. So there's tools out there. If you want help, please reach out for them. All right. I think that's it, right? Forgetting anything?
Sounds pretty good.
All right. Well, you want to take us out of here?
Yeah. Try to say something nice to someone. Say something nice to someone this week and see how it makes you feel.
I'll try it now. Hey, Heno, you don't suck.
Feeling better?
I feel great, yeah. All right, we'll talk to you next week.